We have ground the tape on the All-22 for the Dolphins' first preseason showcase against the Atlanta Falcons, and we're talking observations on the offensive side of the football here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Network. It is Sunday, August 13th, 2023. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Appreciate you guys who do keep it locked in with us on a daily basis, because we don't just say it, we live it. It is your team every day. Our everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you. And I appreciate the fact that football is back. I am back into a routine that maybe it's a little tedious for some, but not for me. My Twitter handle is @grindingthetape. My X handle, my Instagram handle is @grindingthetape. So we ground the tape. We got the coach's film, and I have myself a Dolphins roster with a whole bunch of black on it, which is names that did not play against the Falcons. And I got notes on a lot of what we saw. And because of that, we're doing two shows. We're going to do an offensive show and a defensive show dedicated to breaking down some of the more refined, deep dive observations that I had. And I know that there's a lot of players that a lot of you were interested in hearing from as well. So with that in mind, let's dive in. We're going to start with the offensive line performers. And, of course, the Dolphins did not have Connor Williams suit up. Dan Feeney, Rob Hunt, Kendall Lamb, Teron Armstead did not dress for this football game. Undrafted rookie center Alama Ualave played the most snaps of any player on the Dolphins in this football game with 66. He went wire to wire. You also had Lester Cotton, who started, ceded the second quarter to Robert Jones, came back in the second half, played more. He played 47 snaps. Robert Jones himself played 40 snaps. Keon Smith at left tackle played 33 snaps. You had James Tunstall come in and play 33 snaps. Isaiah Wynn played 31 snaps. So you kind of work your way down, and you have players who played meaningful volume of snaps. Isaiah Wynn playing into the fourth quarter of this football game after not starting. That, of course, going to Liam Eichenberg, who played 14 snaps, along with Austin Jackson playing in the first quarter over the course of two series. So I got a lot. We got a lot of players to talk about. Now, we'll start with the obvious two, those players who did start and are penciled, or at least have been penciled in as starters for this football team, and Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson. I thought Austin Jackson showcased the athletic ability that you're hopeful is going to unlock his potential in this offensive system. You saw a lot of really good horizontal flow in the run game, creating good movement, showing some heavy hands in the run game to create lateral displacement. I think where he kind of got caught up in some of the reps that he took in that game was he was combo or working off of the first level too quickly to look to climb to the second level. And based off the combinations he was working with his left guard, no one secured the A-gap defender. So he creates good movement, he creates this flow, and then he looks to climb to the second level, but the guard hasn't secured the defensive lineman, and then the defensive lineman uncovers himself in the hole and is able to challenge the ball carrier. So when I watched Austin Jackson and the execution in the run game, the movement skills looked good. I thought his pass sets looked pretty effective. He looked comfortable. He wasn't tested with the athleticism. And I mean, look, the Falcons played Arnold Ebiketie, who was a second-round pick last year, into the fourth quarter. I felt bad for James Tunstall down the stretch. It's like, okay, he's a UDFA tackle, and he's getting tagged by a second-round pick last year who played at Penn State and is going to be a starter for that Falcons football team. The Falcons ran out the starters to close the football game, and they did. But I thought Austin himself in pass protection looked good. I think the execution of some of the concepts and working with a new right guard, that was the work in progress that when you play the Texans, I want to see a little bit more improvement from. But I think overall this was a fair performance from Austin Jackson. Not quite the same warm and fuzzies for Liam Eichenberg. I still feel like balance is just an issue for him. He doesn't have kind of that natural power with length to be able to jolt and create first contact. So he's a little bit more of a secure and sustain type blocker, but his balance is not necessarily a strength. And in pass protection, he got pushed back on a number of occasions back into the lap of Mike White and made throws harder than they needed to be. And you contrast that with Liam Eichenberg versus what you got from Isaiah Wynn in 31 snaps. And Isaiah Wynn, I thought, was a dog in this football game. I thought he climbed to the second level well. I think he created good movement. I think he had a little bit better refined execution on combination blocks on the interior than what we just got done talking about with Austin Jackson, as far as everybody's washing to the right and he creates this big jolt and he gets up on the second level and then he peels back and he creates the wall on the other side. He's influencing both sides of the lane that Myles Gaskin hits coming downhill for a big time run. And I just thought you saw better mobility, better power, and better balance from Isaiah Wynn across 31 snaps than you did for Liam Eichenberg. Now, Robert Jones, I thought, played very, very well as well. I don't think he's as dynamic as Isaiah Wynn, but he played within himself, and that's been something that I think has been a challenge for him in the past. And granted, Atlanta's depth players not having Grady Jarrett out there and David Onyemata out there as far as defensive tackles, it's a little easier if you're not a plus athlete to play within yourself when you're not tested by that high end athleticism. But that's not to take anything away from the job that Robert Jones did. I thought he performed quite well. As far as Olave, the undrafted center who played the entire wire, I just wish we had a little bit more anchor to work with here. Saw some times where he was a little overwhelmed, and he is undersized, where he's getting outreached. He's at first contact, losing at first contact, and defenders swimming up over the top of him and creating pressure on Skylar Thompson. He's a player who I think played admirably, but I just think the physical tools right now, as a guy who's maybe a little physically underdeveloped, is really going to be a challenge for him to overcome. So I appreciated the effort that he put forth. And speaking of guys who have been physically underdeveloped, but a guy who delivered a heck of a performance for you across 33 snaps, and that was Keon Smith. Keon Smith, I think, probably handed in the single best performance as a member of the Dolphins is what he's had since he's been with this football team as a developmental type player. Really good in protection. His length, I thought he used his hands really well. I don't think he's a rosterable option for you if we're still being honest. But if we get two more preseason performances like that, we might have to start asking ourselves some questions on what we think we know about Keon Smith. I thought he did very, very well for himself to latch and sustain with his hands, and with his length, it created these challenges for anybody to be able to turn the corner around him and really work up past him. And he played in the first half, 33 snaps. So I think as far as offensive linemen go, let me make sure I'm not forgetting anybody that I had prominent notes on. I thought of the tackles that played, I thought Jerron Christian struggled the most. Hand placement, strike timing, and weight distribution. James Tunstall, grading him on a little bit of a curve as somebody who did have to go against Ebiketie down the stretch, who is he's going to be a stud pass rusher in the NFL. He's just a little younger. And then Lester Cotton, I thought, played admirably, but I think the athletic limitations for Lester Cotton were prevalent in watching him try to sustain with all of this lateral flow of the Dolphins, whether it's the run game or it's play action pass where they're selling horizontal run to create that wash in displacement. The further those landmarks stretched, the more I thought he struggled to sustain himself. And that's something that when you talk about players being scheme fits for this system, that's something that I don't know that we're going to have a fix for Lester Cotton. So those are my offensive line notes. We have a lot more notes to dive into. Obviously, we're doing 2 shows on the All-22 of the first preseason game. So you have that to look forward to. We are going to continue bringing the heat, and we're going to switch gears, talk about some skill players here in just a moment. August is here, and you know what that means. It is the official start of fantasy football drafting month. My hometown league kicks off in less than 2 weeks, and I am going to make sure I am championship ready by trying out best ball on Underdog Fantasy. All you have to do is one live snake draft with no waivers, no trades. Underdog sets your best lineup each and every week. You can try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania tournament. It is the largest fantasy football contest of all times, and it is back with over $15 million. I'll say it again, $15 million in total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million grand prize going to the winner. Last year, the winner drafted their team in July. So don't wait. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with promo code LOCKEDON to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKEDON. So I'll move down to the next section here of the offseason roster. And we got skill guys, and skill guys that we did not see play included, obviously, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Alec Ingold, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Braylon Sanders, Robbie Chosen, Durham Smythe. You know, casually, the vast majority of players who are going to be on the 53. But I'll start with the tight end room because I think this is a really interesting collection of talent. We did not see Durham Smythe perform. I think Tyler Kroft is kind of quietly moving up the rankings. And we kind of slept on the Tyler Kroft signing because Kroft was a late addition. He was not a part of the original wave. But I don't know how you watch what Tyler Kroft did and you compare and contrast that to what we've seen between training camp and now a preseason contest from Eric Saubert, and feel like Kroft is not ahead of Eric Saubert as far as execution. And I don't know that that's necessarily a big surprise because Eric Saubert has played in Denver and Tyler Kroft has spent the last several seasons in branches of this offense between the New York Jets and the San Francisco 49ers. But I thought Kroft played pretty darn well. And Kroft, case in point, from a volume perspective, played 29 snaps. And I thought the fits in split flow were good. I thought the execution on the backside against defensive ends to make sure you were preventing backside rundowns on the weak side away from the run action was good as well. There's not going to be a ceiling here as a pass catcher, right? Kroft was on the field for 29 snaps. He pass blocked on 2. He run blocked on 17, and he ran 10 routes. But if that's the expectation for your tight ends, like, okay, we're going to live in that world, right? And there were some big-bodied guys who did contribute to both the blocking and the passing that caught passes, and we'll talk about them in just a moment. But I thought Saubert really could have used a strong performance. I don't think they got one, and Saubert played 24 snaps. He had a pretty reasonable amount of volume as well, and his ratio of run block to pass routes was about the same as Tyler Kroft's. But I thought Kroft did a better job of execution, securing his blocks, correctly working to the right space, correctly securing and sustaining blocks. Kroft moved the needle for me, I'm going to be honest. And Saubert's on a 1-year deal worth, it's like $1.6, $1.8 million with like $800,000 of that guaranteed. I'm just going to be watching it as we go from here. I'd like that to work out, obviously, for both Eric and the team versus Tyler Kroft. I don't know that they will both make the 53-man roster. But I can tell you one guy who is trending very much towards making the 53-man roster, and it is Elijah Higgins, who played 22 snaps. He ran 16 routes and blocked on 6 plays of his 22. Now, he had the big catch, ran the I don't want to call it a rail route. It's more of a shallow wheel up the sideline. Skylar Thompson gets into scramble drill. Higgins stops, works back downhill, makes the catch, breaks out in the middle of the field. That was his big reception. And then on the next play, caught a split flow action the other way that I thought was a ball that was a little late and really robbed Elijah of a chance to turn north and get upfield. But Higgins, for 6 plays in the run game, he lined up at fullback on more than one occasion. I thought he did a really nice job on the backside of one run. That was a zone run that he ran the backside cut off and really latched on the end man in the line of scrimmage and put him down into the ground. So for a former wide receiver 6th-round pick converting to tight end, there's some traction here. I think I feel it. I feel his versatility. And you take Elijah Higgins as a former receiver and his physicality, and then you take what Eric Ezukama was able to do for you. And if you really boil Eric Ezukama's performance down to just kind of the bullet points, the dude was an absolute dog in the run game. He was relentless. Now, he was on the field for 26 snaps. He carried the ball twice, and of the other 24 snaps, he ran 17 routes, and he blocked on 7. And he got after dudes in the blocking. Created a lot of displacement by nickels and on the second level, and he's getting up and he's mean mugging guys as he's walking back to the line of scrimmage. So you could tell he was really into the game, and he hit 21. So he was a dog in the run game. He hit over 21 miles per hour on the GPS on the big run end around that he ran. The first end around that he ran, he was boxed in by a defensive end that got left unblocked on that jet motion, and he made that player miss, spun out of it. He's 3/4 of the way around the spin, and he gets his eyes north again and identifies 2 blockers or 2 defenders that are inside with blockers on the outside, parlays the spin into an outside bounce, gets up the sideline, and gets a big chunk gain, and stiff arms the defender along the sideline to make sure he's falling forward at the end of the run. And then I thought he had the nice toe tap catch along the sideline. There's a lot of good for Eric Ezukama in this performance. And that level of versatility, bringing that and seeing the full picture of how he's mixing it up with defenders like Trent Sherfield in the run game. I don't think Trent ever put a guy on his back like Ezukama put one of those DBs on his back on Friday night. But then you got 21 miles per hour in the gun. Then you got the short area elusiveness and the physicality with the ball in your hands. That has the potential, that layer has the potential to add a totally different element to this offense if Ezukama is going to build off that. So I'm highly intrigued to see what it looks like. I thought Braxton Berrios had a couple reps where he had really good initial separation. Ball maybe not necessarily fully on time, and the one target down on 4th down on the crossing route. Mike White kind of had to step up and hitch and wait to get to a second throwing window based on the vicinity of the blocker and the defender that was directly in front of his face, which was a bummer because if the ball came out on time as Berrios was crossing over the center, it had been a touchdown. But that route had to continue carrying, and it was man coverage, so he had to carry and run away from it. And then I thought he had one on a 3rd down target where his arm was hooked and tried to catch it with one hand. That was a ball that was pretty well placed from Mike White that I was surprised they didn't get a break on. But I thought Berrios showcased some nice separation for you as well. As far as other wide receivers, I know Ezukama was kind of the big one for me. Devon Achane, running back position. Shout out to Myles Gaskin, ran hard, smooth cuts. Had one really nice cut coming out of the mesh point. Jump cut, sticks his foot in his ground, gets north, creates something out of nothing. I think Myles Gaskin is the quintessential replacement level running back, but if things are good around him, you can get production for him. And I did think the Dolphins, their offensive line, I thought run blocked fairly well throughout the course of especially the first half when Isaiah Wynn's in the game and you've got Austin Jackson in the game and Rob Jones played some of the right guard position and Keon Smith was out there as well. So I thought the run game in the first half was the strength of the Dolphins offense. But for Devon Achane, he needs to be better in pass protection to demand an early role. Almost all of his pass protection reps that I noted were cutting down low on free runners coming through gaps in the second level. And some of them he got pretty good. Some of them he did not. And even the ones that he got pretty good, if that's the world that you're going to live in where you're going to go low on guys all the time, you're going to open yourself up for guys splaying off you with their hands, guys being able to still get their hands up and contest throwing windows in your quarterback's face. So that for me was what I was eager to watch. I didn't think we had great push, especially in the second half in the run game. Obviously, he was 10 for 25 yards. He had one big negative run on a busted block up front, which was a bit of a buzzkill, but I thought he ran admirably hard. I think you see the upside as a pass catcher. You saw the explosiveness the few times he got in the open field, the one catch up the right sideline where he accelerated for about a 14-yard gain. Obviously, the opening kickoff return that he had that put the Dolphins in plus field position. But rookie running backs have to ace two tests before they get on the field with any level of consistency. And it's ball security and it's pass protection. And that is where I'm going to keep a very watchful eye down the stretch for Devon Achane. We're going to talk quarterbacks. Mike White, Skylar Thompson split the duties of this contest 50-50, one half apiece. That's what we're going to bring this episode of Locked On Dolphins to a close with. Football season is just about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you'll get bonus bets back every time they win in the regular season. So if you want to pick the Dolphins to win the big dance this year, you'll get bonus bets back from FanDuel for every game the Dolphins win throughout the course of the season. And you can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get in the action. So quarterback play. I know there's been a lot that's been made about the QB2 battle and it being pretty underwhelming throughout the course of the night on Friday. I would generally agree with that assessment. What I would say my biggest big picture observation is this. I don't think Mike White played spectacularly well or exceptionally well, but I think the difference between him and Skylar Thompson was exceptional. Skylar Thompson did not play a good football game on Friday night. And I understand you're trying to evaluate him in the midst of the struggles of third and fourth string offensive linemen in some cases, especially when they're going up against starting defenders for the Atlanta Falcons like James Tunstall did. And, Ebiketie beats Tunstall with an inside move for a strip sack down the stretch. It looked like the interception that Skylar had was a tipped pass on that ball that came in hot and high that was ran back after the Dolphins gave up the punt return for the touchdown to lose ground in that football game. So some of these things were extenuating circumstances beyond Skylar Thompson's control. But there's also opportunities where the protection is set and the Falcons bring a fifth rusher and it's away from the way the center turns. And you as the quarterback have to understand if that extra pressure comes, it's your responsibility. And he either doesn't see it, he doesn't feel it, he feels it late. The first interception that he had was a deep ball to Elijah Higgins, which was a horrendous decision. I think you watch his feel and rhythm as a passer, and on routes that work across the middle of the field, you'll see extra steps with his footwork. I've kind of referred to Skylar as being more of a general accuracy passer than a pinpoint accuracy passer. I think footwork compounds that at times. I think you see him get up on his toes a whole bunch to try to see up over top of offensive linemen, and that can compound your accuracy issues as well. But I thought from a execution standpoint, Skylar Thompson did not play to the standard that I would have of a quarterback who was with your team last year and started some football games for you down the stretch, and you were looking to see growth. I thought the decision for Mike White on the ball that was intercepted down in the red zone was a poor decision. It was an overly ambitious decision. Looked like it was probably a little bit late, and he's, of course, rolling to his left, so you get a compound. You got to flip yourself all the way back around to throw the football. All that said, he did put it right on Tyler Kroft's hands. It did technically hit both of his hands, and when you watched it frame by frame, but Kroft was contacted right as the ball arrived. So expecting him to catch the ball is not realistic, and I would put the decision to throw that ball into that super tight window on Mike White. But I thought Mike White did a pretty solid job from a timing and footwork perspective. I think the rest of his throws he threw with pretty good accuracy and pretty good timing. I thought especially on the opening drive where they were really kind of buzzing before that interception. And they moved the ball in the first half. I think they moved the ball with pretty reasonable consistency. And I think Mike White has a nice feather in his cap here in the battle for QB2 that if it's going to look like that, it's not a battle in my mind. It's Mike White, and then there's a large gap to Skylar Thompson. And he's going to have to turn it up. And I'll be interested to see against Houston if Skylar gets in with the players that Mike White played with. Say you get the starters for a quarter or a possession, and then you seed it to kind of the players that started this game. Put Skylar Thompson with the same group that Mike White had that success with in this contest and see what it looks like. But I came away from this contest highly discouraged by the performance of Skylar Thompson. I think Mike White played okay with a looming bad decision in the red zone. And he also had a couple throws that I thought were really nicely placed throws with having to deal with traffic right in front of his face. And getting those throws out is a win versus Skylar, who averaged about 3 seconds time to throw across the course of the entire game that he was out on the football field. So that's my thoughts on the Dolphins' offensive side of the ball. We will be back with defensive notes and another episode of Locked On Dolphins coming your way in the very near future. So plan accordingly. I'm Kyle Krabs. Fins up. I appreciate you guys checking on the show. Make sure you keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins because it is your team every day. Shout out to our everydayers. I will talk to you all again soon to go over defensive notes from the All-22. Peace.